So today we're going to talk about isosceles triangles. And an isosceles triangle is when you have two sides that are congruent. Okay? And so it's a triangle with at least two sides congruent. Now we call the angle on top, we call that the vertex angle. And we call these two angles on the bottom, we call those base angles. So something interesting about the base angles, if we know that this side equals this side, then we also know that these are called base angles. The base angles are congruent. So if you know the sides are congruent, then the base angles are also congruent. So if this is 40 degrees, that's 40 degrees. If that's 50, that's 50. Now the vertex angle does not have to be congruent, just the base angles. So if two sides of a triangle are congruent, so if this is congruent to this, then the angles opposite those sides are also congruent. So an example, let's say I have this, and I said that this equals this, and I said this is 30 degrees, and I said what is x? You would say x is 30 because the base angles should be congruent. Another example, let's say that DE, so I'm going to mark this DE, is congruent to CD, and BC is congruent to AC. And then we also know that the measure of CDE is 20, or 120. So what is the measure of BAC? So they want me to find the measure of this angle right here. Well, if this is 120, and I know that three angles in a triangle add up to 180, then that would leave 60 degrees left, because 120 plus 60 is 180. So if there's 60 degrees left, this has to be 30. Because 30 plus 30 plus 120 is 180. And then if this is 30, and you want me to find this angle, those are vertical angles. So then I could say that angle BAC, well, they want me to find BAC. So this angle would also be 30 degrees. And I was wrong, they want us to find this angle right here, BAC. And then if that's 30, that would be the vertex angle. So that means these two are the same, because it's the angle opposite the side. So if that's 30, that leaves 150 left over. And if I divide it between the two to make them the same, that'd be 75. So this would be 75, and that'd be 75. So they said, what's the measure of angle BAC? The measure of angle BAC another theorem says that if we know that those two angles are congruent, then that means the side opposite those angles are also congruent. So if two angles of a triangle are congruent, then the two sides opposite those are congruent. So here's an example. Let's say I told you that this was 20 degrees and this was 20 degrees. And then I said that this side is 10, and I said, what is x? You would say 10. And that's it. If the angles are the same, then the sides opposite those should also be the same. Example 2, we're going to name all the congruent angles, and then we're going to name all the congruent segments. Well, first, I know that angle L equals angle M. How do I know that? That was a given. They told me that with this marking. They said L equals M. And actually, it's hard to tell which angle I'm talking about, so I really should call this PLM. That way I could say that's PLM, and I would say that's congruent to PML. That would be better to name them like that. And then I also know that if this side equals this side, then the angle opposite those sides are also congruent. So I know this angle equals this angle. And so I could say that angle MLN is congruent to MNL. I can also see that LM is congruent to MN. And then if these angles are congruent, then the sides opposite those are congruent, so that I know that PM equals LP. I should call that PL. So if all three sides of a triangle are the same, we call it equilateral. If a triangle is equilateral, that also means that all the angles are equal. We call it equiangular. So if all three angles are equal and all angles add up to 180, if you take 180 divided by 3 to make them the same, that would make them all 60. So anytime you have an equilateral triangle, all the angles are 60 degrees. There's an example. We know that angle EFG is equilateral. So that'd be the whole thing. So as soon as they tell me that EFG is equilateral, I know that this is 60. I know this is 60. And then I also know that angle 1 plus angle 2 is 60. 60, 60, this is also 60. They also tell me that EH, so EH would be right here, that it bisects angle E. Well, if you bisect an angle, that means it makes both angles the same. So if this whole thing is 60 and it bisects it and cuts it in half, then that would make this 30 and that would make that 30. So what is the measure of angle 1 and 2? Measure of angle 1 is 30 degrees. And the measure of angle 2 is 30 degrees. It also says find x. I have a triangle right here. I see the x. I know that if I take, and I look in this orange triangle, if I add up those three angles, it should equal 180. So if I take 30 plus 60 plus 15x, it should equal 180. If you take 30 plus 60 plus 15x, three angles in the interior of a triangle is 180. Do the math. 30 plus 60 is 90. Subtract 90 from both sides. And then 90 divided by 15 is 5. So what is x? X is 5.